Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating, complex story that honestly just defies easy labels.
Yeah, we're talking about the Korean historical political fantasy Manhwa, Kingsmaker.
And it's sprawling, isn't it? You've got the prequel, the main story, and then the sequel, Triple Crown.
Exactly. And while you might initially peg it as maybe boys' love or romance, it's so much more. It's this incredibly detailed political thriller. And layered onto that, these really intense character studies focusing on trauma, on healing.
Following Prince Wolfgang Golden Leonard and his key strategist, Shin Soo-yuk.
It's their journey, their complicated relationship, really.
So our goal here, our mission, is to kind of unpack how this series manages to weave together these different threads.
You mean the high-stakes political plot overthrowing a tyrant?
Right, that. And then also delivering this deeply affecting emotional story. It's quite a balancing act.
It really is. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the plot, we absolutely have to put a content warning out there. This is crucial.
Yes, definitely. We need to be very clear.
We're discussing a mature manhwa. That means it includes explicit sexual content. It deals with themes like suggestions of pederasty, the abuse of minors, and pretty graphic depictions of violence.
And it's important to say these aren't just thrown in for shock value. They are fundamental to the main characters' backstories, their trauma, their motivations.
Absolutely. We discuss them because they are central to understanding the story, not to sensationalize them.
Yeah.
So please, listener discretion is strongly advised.
Okay, with that very important note made, let's set the scene. The kingdom is basically suffocating under the rule of the main villain, King Golden Leonard.
And villain almost feels too simple. He's described as truly sadistic, cruel, manipulative.
He seems to get actual pleasure from tormenting people, his subjects, even his own children. He's the source of all this institutional rot.
Yeah, his cruelty is the bedrock the whole story is built on. And it's this cruelty that directly brings Wolfgang Golden Leonard, the fourth prince, back into the fold.
Wolfgang wasn't raised in the palace, was he?
No, not at all. He grew up tough on the streets after his mother died. He was completely outside the power structure. Resourceful, sure, but wild.
And the sources really highlight this key moment early on. The king starts executing random young men just because they have the same name as Wolfgang.
Just as a twisted ploy to force the real prince out of hiding.
And Wolfgang turns himself in. He gives up his freedom to stop these innocent people from dying. That act tells you so much about him.
Absolutely. That selflessness, that fierce sense of justice, it defines him.
But it immediately sets him against his mother's dying words, doesn't it?
Ah, yes. That crucial piece of advice. Do not ever covet the king's possessions. Act like you do not. It hands over everything.
Which leads us perfectly to Shin Soo-hyuk, because Shin is presented as one of the king's most prized possessions.
Exactly. Shin is the brilliant, politically astute son of the foreign minister. But he's been kept in the palace as one of the king's sovereign darlings.
Which sounds nice, but it's basically a hostage situation, right?
Yeah.
Palace favorites, but under complete control.
And the psychological toll is immense. Shin has endured years of manipulation, constant psychological torment, and, importantly, implied sexual abuse. It's left him deeply scarred.
Conditioned, really, to see himself not as a person, but as property, a tool.
Utterly guarded. Views himself as nothing more than a possession.
But Shin isn't broken. Not entirely. He's driven by this deep need for revenge and for genuine freedom, and he sees something in Wolfgang.
He recognizes that raw potential, maybe that shared hatred for the king. It's a huge gamble, though.
It seems almost irrational, doesn't it? Pinning all his hopes on this impulsive kid he barely knows.
It's incredibly risky, yes. But for Shin, it feels necessary. There's no other path out. So he makes the offer, the deal.
Right. Shin says, basically, I'll teach you everything. Court politics, strategy, how to act like royalty.
How to become king material. Turn this street urchin into a viable contender.
And in return,
Wolfgang has to take the throne.
right.
And crucially, he must guarantee Shin's absolute freedom. Not just release, but true, irreversible freedom.
So it starts as a conspiracy, a partnership based on mutual need. Shin's genius for Wolfgang's raw power.
That's the foundation. And it means Shin has to put his own healing, his own emotional needs completely on hold.
He becomes Wolfgang's strategist, his shield, his kingmaker.
Precisely. And that's what Season 1 is largely about. The politics, the intrigue, it takes center stage. Shin is meticulously guiding Wolfgang, step by step.
So the romance element is very much on the back burner at this point.
Extremely slow burn. Honestly, neither of them is in a place emotionally where they could handle real intimacy yet. Survival comes first.
And you really see Wolfgang change during this time. He has to learn control.
Yeah, channeling that raw courage he has, managing his temper, developing the kind of poise a ruler needs. Shin essentially molds him.
He becomes the weapon Shin needs to win the game.
And they don't do it alone, of course.
Yeah.
They need allies. Grand Duke Ulysses is a fantastic character.
Oh, yes. He seems so flamboyant, maybe even a bit flighty at first glance.
Right. But underneath that, there's serious trauma. His family was massacred by the old king's regime. He survived, but he carries that weight.
And he's sharp, very cunning, uses his knowledge, including those deadly medicinal arts the sources mention.
He becomes a really vital, if slightly unpredictable, part of Wolfgang's faction. It kind of shows how everyone opposing the king has been damaged by him in some way.
Shin's playing his own complex games too, isn't he? That move to get himself disowned by the king.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. A calculated risk to basically insulate himself, to protect the rebellion by seeming to lose his own standing. Masterful political maneuvering.
It all builds towards the coup, the actual overthrow. And what's really interesting is how it happens.
You mean who carries it out?
Yeah. It's not just the nobles switching sides, it's largely the servants, the lower-ranking soldiers. A bottom-up rebellion, really.
Which is such a great, subtle critique, isn't it?
Yeah.
This story points out the second-tier soldiers, the ones loyal to the old guard, wore this impractical gold armor.
Look good. Probably cost a fortune.
Totally ineffective in actual fighting. It contrasts sharply with the practical needs and the effectiveness of the common people who actually make the revolution happen.
So the coup succeeds, the tyrant is overthrown, Wolfgang takes the throne.
And Shin, the mastermind, gets his reward. Sort of. He's immediately appointed Minister of Finance.
Talk about a tough job, cleaning up decades of corruption.
Right. They've won the kingdom.
Well,
but the personal battle, the relationship, that's really just beginning.
Which brings us to the sequel, Triple Crown. And this is where the story really shifts gears, doesn't it?
Massively. The focus moves from the external fight, the politics, the coup, to the internal struggles, the challenges of actually ruling, and the deep personal issues between Wolfgang and Shin.
And this is where some readers felt the pacing changed, maybe found the romance too slow.
I could see why they'd feel that, but it feels necessary, you know, because the central conflict now is Shin's trauma. Those scars from the old king run incredibly deep.
He can't just flip a switch and accept that he's free, that Wolfgang's feelings are genuine.
Exactly. He's terrified. He's just exchanged one owner for another. That he's Wolfgang's war trophy, something won, not someone loved equally.
That creates so much distance between them, even though they're officially together. That official couple ordeal syndrome the sources mention.
Yeah, it's painful to watch sometimes.
Yeah.
Wolfgang is genuinely trying. He's a good king, benevolent, loves Shin unconditionally. But he's still learning emotional maturity.
He has to learn to understand that Shin pushing him away isn't about him. It's about Shin's past, that deep humiliation. It's not rejection, it's a trauma response.
It's a really complex power dynamic, too. Wolfgang is now the king, the ultimate authority. But in Shin's head, he's still trapped in that old dynamic of being controlled.
And the outside world doesn't just leave him alone to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
There's still political trouble.
Well, more instability.
Yeah.
Another attempted coup, new enemies popping up among the nobles in other countries. They constantly have to defend the new regime.
There's that major incident where Shin gets kidnapped and poisoned.
Right. And that becomes a huge test. It forces them to kind of put aside their internal struggles, their emotional distance.
Especially because Shin develops a split personality after being tortured, right? That adds another layer of difficulty.
It does. They have to work together just to survive, to secure their power. And in doing that, it actually reaffirms how much they need each other.
Their bond isn't just personal, it's crucial for the kingdom's stability. Their feelings end up being the anchor.
And thankfully, the story gives them that resolution. Shin does confront his demons. He starts to see himself not as a possession, but as Wolfgang's equal.
He finally accepts Wolfgang's love, truly accepts it, becomes a genuine partner, a co-ruler.
They reach the goal. They set way back with the deal. They build that stable, just kingdom. And they get formally married, even get the blessing of the dragon's husband.
Which is a big deal, politically and symbolically.
Huge. It validates their union, their rule. They finally break not just the political cycle of tyranny, but that personal cycle of damage, too.
We absolutely have to talk about the art before we wrap up. Kang Ji-young's artwork is just stunning.
Oh, it's breathtaking. It's one of the first things everyone mentions. The level of detail, the way emotions are conveyed visually. It adds so much.
It really elevates the whole experience. It's not just pretty pictures, it's part of the storytelling. I love the color symbolism too.
You mean the gold for Wolfgang and the black for Suyuk?
Yeah, it reflects their personalities, their roles, Wolfgang's sort of fiery power and Shin's reserved strategic depth. And the clothes, the details in the outfits change as their status changes.
It's meticulous. And I think all this, the art, the complex plot, the characters, it's why King's Maker stands out so much in the BL genre.
It uses the framework but goes so much deeper, tackling these really heavy themes: abuse, trauma, corruption.
And it does it with realism and nuance. It doesn't shy away from the darkness, but it's not exploitative.
There's that deliberate contrast, too. The old King's power dynamics were all about non-consent, depravity.
Whereas the relationship between Wolfgang and Shin, while slow and difficult, is fundamentally built on consent, on growing intimacy, on mutual respect, especially clear in the mature version.
That journey towards healing and partnership is really the heart of it.
So summarizing the character arcs, Wolfgang goes from this impulsive, street-smart kid
To a strong, fair king, someone who learned patience, learned strategy, had to balance his passion.
and Shin's journey is arguably even bigger. From this brilliant but deeply traumatized captive
Calculating, always guarding himself.
to someone who can finally be open, who accepts love, accepts his own worth, a true partner and co-ruler. The prequel set the stage, the main story brought the revolution.
And Triple Crown delivered that crucial internal healing.
Yeah, I think King's Maker really shows how personal desires like Shin's desire for revenge and political goals like the need for freedom and a just kingdom are completely intertwined.
You can't really separate them in this story. Achieving one requires achieving the other.
And the victory only really counts if both are fulfilled.
Which feels like the big takeaway from the whole trauma arc, doesn't it? Getting rid of the tyrant is just step one.
Absolutely. The much harder fight, the longer one, is rebuilding. Rebuilding the society, yes, but also healing the people broken by the old regime.
Which circles back beautifully to Wolfgang's mother's warning.
Do not ever covet the king's possessions. And Shin saw himself purely as the king's possession for so long.
So thinking about that, what does it really signify when Wolfgang does, in the end, claim Shin? Not as a prize, not as a possession.
But as his husband, his equal partner.
That act, and maybe more importantly, Shin's ability to finally accept it. Perhaps that's the ultimate proof that the cycle of tyranny, both political and personal, has genuinely been broken. Something for you to think about.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing.